So stressful.
Morning all, and welcome to today's Jump webinar. Today we're going to be talking about price, and we're going to be looking at how we can increase our price without potentially ruining our client relationship. We are waiting for Paul Jacobs to arrive. He's having problems logging in with technical, but he should be here soon. So I've got Paul Sharp with me. But the big question that I think we need to ask is, this is the question I think most recruiters never actually ask, but probably continue to wonder, is why do clients not pay for our service, considering they're procuring the most expensive and the most cost-effective product in their business when they pay for every other part of the business up front when they procure some sort of service from there? And it's really interesting. I go back there, when I started to do the research for this week's webinar, I look back at my career and I look back at the early 90s. In the early 90s, the average fee was around about 15% on perm, approaching 20% on contract. Temp, depending if you're counting in the obligatory tax, etc., is just about the same. However, the cost of running a recruitment agency and the cost of recruitment in itself has significantly increased, where in Maine, the actual pricing and costing to our clients has either flatlined or actually reduced quite significantly. Expert HR has reported approximately 40% of employers in the last 12 months have reported increase of costs per hire due to the labour shortage, and it's the tightest labour shortage since 1971. Over the last 2 years, though, clients are significantly driven to do the following things. And these are in order compared to one of the big ATS companies who's done a big research into over 100,000 clients of what's going on. They have a desire to recruit more efficiently. They want to attract more candidates and push direct applications, improve user experience, keep the recruitment costs low, fill the jobs first time, not the quick kids, want more due diligence so they can make better decisions to reduce attrition. They want more centralized process, i.e. AI tools to make recruitment easier, and they want to be more agile. They want better reporting information so they can make more informed market decisions, and they want to recruit ethically and improve diversity and unconscious bias. That's from clients. Wow, when we look at that as recruiters, that should be like a big red flag to us saying, what can we do now? And yet we can't truly address, when you sort of think about their recruitment strategies, they don't truly address the recruitment strategies. And in most cases, what we find is that we're having to reduce our fees because of their inadequacies, and we get little commitment from their side. So basically, clients aren't seeing the value in what we can give them. However, the last 6 months has truly put the ball in our court. The labour shortage and the increase in spotlight has actually said making a bad hire, the well-being of staff, and recruiting the right people into your business is now the biggest board table discussion around. And yet, recruiters still don't push back. We're not pushing back on price because clients don't see the value. And I think now clients are starting to see the value in the work we do. And I'll repeat that. Clients are now seeing the value in the work we do. And for once, we've got an opportunity to really go back to the clients and ask them and demand, in some cases, that they pay more for the service and give more assurance when they're procuring our recruitment services. As I said, I'm waiting for Paul, although he's just texted me saying, I'm in. Please make me visible, H. I'm not sure what that means, but he's trying to in and he's trying to make himself visible. I've got Paul Sharp on as I try and work out what I'm doing with Mr. Jacobs and get Mr. Jacobs in. Let me go to the first question, Paul, so you can look at the first question. Why is it that recruiters are scared to ask clients to increase their rates or fees?
Thank you. I just need to emphasise to everybody listening, I had no idea you were going to turn up in a white Jump t-shirt as well. This is not scripted. Maybe it's just bad fashion sense rather than good fashion sense. I think this for me is a really interesting subject because we've been talking to a lot of our clients about the same issue and equally the same opportunity. I think the starting point for me starts with a mindset, and you've just mentioned the phrase, which I'm just going to pick up on, which is around the client seeing the value. I think the starting point for me is we've got to see the value. So if we don't believe that there is significant value in what we do, and if we believe we're just providing a transactional service, then our mindset will affect us behavior. Our behavior will be seen and visible by everybody else. And we've got to change that. So it's got to start with us. We've got to start with us about getting this mindset right, and that will then flow through to behavior. I do think a bit of this as well is around fear of rejection and fear of clients saying no. And that all comes back from, we'd only be fearful of rejection and fearful of clients saying no if we didn't have enough work on. But I honestly can't think of a recruitment business out there at this moment in time that doesn't have enough work on. So this comes back to your point, really, Howard, which is now is the absolute right time to start to look at the fees that we charge and make sure that it's aligned. You've mentioned about the cost of sale going up. We've also got to look at the the data around the labour market as well. Everything is pointing to the perfect storm. Now is the time to make sure we're getting a reasonable fee for the work that we do.
I think you're right. I think Paul's has just arrived as he had a bit of a technical problem getting in, but through the wonders of modern technology, Paul has worked his way into the webinar from there. It wasn't us, but Mr. Sharp and I trying to keep you out there, Paul. We were trying to keep you in. So the first question is, why is it that recruiters are scared to ask clients to increase their fees and rates?
I just think that this is a perennial issue. This is not just to do with this current situation, the current economy. I think people have always been nervous to ask to clients to increase fees and rates. One of the first things that I always do with every client that I start working with is to review their terms and conditions of business. And when you look at them, you often find that they haven't been looked at for years. I'm sometimes talking decades. So we've basically had the same percentage fees in place and the same parameters in terms of salaries against those percentages forever. They've never changed. One of the quickest ways to increase your fee levels is to review your terms of business straight away and consider whether you can increase the percentages. The pushback often is, well, they're not going to pay these additional fees. But my answer to that is, well, they won't in all probability. We're not talking about them paying rate card, but what you are in a position of them being able to do is negotiate down from a higher level, which will mean you'll end up at a higher level when you finally agree a fee. So this issue of pushing back on fees and challenging clients on fees is something that I think we've always been nervous of. I've always been very critical of our industry around fees because people often talk about clients asking and expecting and in fact getting lower fees, but it's the industry itself which allows that. We've always given in as an industry. So which recruitment business does one of us know at any point in my 45 years that's ever got constantly their rate card fees? Nobody is the answer. You often wonder, why do we print them in the first place? So the issue isn't just about now. It's an issue that's been, I think, prevalent in our industry forever. But to Paul's point, now is the time to be going back and speaking to clients about additional fees, because we're in a candidate shortage crisis. It's a crisis. Over 1 million roles available in this country, the highest level of jobs available in the UK since records began. And we all know that underneath all of that is the Brexit situation. This isn't going to change anytime soon. It's a real challenge for everybody, but what an opportunity for us to have a wonderful time. Every one of my clients, and I'm sure yours too, absolutely snowed under with roles right now. In fact, I've just got off the phone to a client who said that she literally can't cope with many more roles coming in. She's so many to work at this moment. So now is the time, supply and demand, to be speaking to clients about increasing fees. And that's particularly true of temporaries and contractors, because again, candidate shortages affect that area, and we have to pay more per hour or more per day or more per week for those people, and those charges have got to be passed on to clients.
So I think a quick question for you. Do you think that we don't sometimes negotiate on price because we can't differentiate on service? So therefore we're just being compared to other suppliers?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I do think that there's some mindset around that.
So I think, guys, it goes actually deeper than that. And I think it genuinely goes deeper than that. And I think we are scared to ask clients for an increase because we're scared to work out how they actually feel. And how they feel is about our service. And do we feel that deep down we give them the best service? Because in reality, what a client does, he puts us in competition. He's made it a competitive marketplace by saying, I'm going to open this to 4 or 5 clients, and I'm going to give those 4 or 5 clients, agencies, the jobs, and off we go and work them. And we all know that that reduces our service levels, because it's the first past the post, the fastest past the post wins, not the best person past the post. But we also know if we get a job from another client that's a better job, an easier job to fill, we just drop that job and go work another job. So although that gives us flexibility, what it actually gives us is a poor service. And we understand that probably deep down internally. So I think internally we're scared to actually push back on a client, because clients probably in truth know that's what we're doing, but they create that stress and they create that distrust, and what that creates is anger from both sides. And I think that all fuels the fire on why we don't go back and ask, because I think what you're saying there, Paul, about we don't understand our service, is it better than anybody else extra? I think that is absolutely right. But I think deep down inside, we know, because the client is pushing us for a competitive piece of recruitment speed against our competition, that we are scared to go back and ask our client and give our client the true understandings on why that is the worst way of recruiting. And I think we're scared to do that.
And Howard, I think I'd add a point here, and that is to say that, we are not doing our clients any favors when we agree to low fees, because when you've only got one quality candidate and you have 3 clients that you can present that candidate to, understandably, and indeed you could argue correctly, we're presenting that candidate to the client that is paying the higher fee. So coming in at a low fee rate and agreeing a low fee rate with the client isn't, in a candidate short market, doing them any favors. Now, the bottom line is none of us want to pay more money for any service. Since when did anybody jump up and punch the air when they were being asked to pay more? We were talking at home last night about the increase in utilities bills. Every one of us is experiencing increased charges on gas, electricity, water. Everyone's moaning about it, but we're going to have to pay it. There's no real choice. There's no way around it. You can look for cheaper suppliers, but in the end, it's still going to be more expensive than we were paying last year. It's a question of supply and demand. If you want the service, if you want the best candidate, then you're going to end up having to pay more money. Now, I don't think, sorry, just to quickly say, I don't think we're saying to anyone listening here, we are profiteering. We're not suggesting for 1 minute that we take advantage of our clients by charging them an exorbitant level of fees. That isn't, certainly not what we're saying. But we are saying that we should be readjusting our fees to reflect the market we're in, and readjusting our fees to cover the additional costs that we're all experiencing now. So
the question then, Paul, is how do we overcome these fears? How do we overcome this fear, and how do we push back to a client to make sure that when we go in and ask for a higher fee, we're not actually bloodying the waters and muddying the waters and creating problems with our relationship with our client?
Look, I think Paul's going to jump in here, but I'll just start the conversation by saying that I think it's about being close to clients. Again, we always talk about this point, that if you're close enough to your clients and you're speaking to them regularly and you're having regular review meetings with them and you're talking about the market, and as Paul will no doubt talk about, the fee issue is just part of a number of other agenda points you're going to cover off. I don't think it's as an awful a conversation as people would expect, but the overcoming fears is going to come down to coaching and training our people, getting our guys into a position where their mindsets are in the right place. I've spent this morning mentoring a young guy working for one of our clients, talking about mindset, the difference in mindset between pre-COVID and post-COVID, and the change in the market that we're now experiencing, and how most people in our industry have not worked in this kind of market before, the candidate-driven market. Most people have worked in a fill a job market, not find a great candidate a job market, which is where we're at. And I think we have a duty as employers to start to retrain and get our people to consider a different mindset, a different level of control over the way they approach vacancies, the way they approach clients. So I think it comes down to, the fear, that's an interesting word you used, Howard, fear, which I think is a correct word, is something that we as employers have got to deal with.
Let Mr. Sharp have a conversation there, because I think, there's a lot we need to discuss. There's a lot of questions we need to ask. So what's your view, Paul, on how we overcome these fears?
Great question. And I'll try and keep to the structure so we don't go off piece too much. I think some of this comes back to being confident with your client. And you mentioned it at the start Paul mentioned it about being close to your client and understanding, your client inside out. So I think that's the starting point. But I think the second thing is, whenever you enter into a negotiation, you've got to be prepared to walk away, right? It's pointless going into a negotiation if somebody at some point is going to say, well, I'm not going to do it, because then it leaves an awkward position. Do you back down? And then how does that come across the client? If you don't back down, then what is the outcome there? So you've got to play these outcomes through in your head, I believe, and you have got to be prepared to walk away. Now, there's nothing wrong with walking away from business. It's how you handle the walking away from business so that you create a sense of loss for the client, and the client feels they're losing out rather than you feeling you're losing out. So I think it comes back to, and we've done some work, Howard, with clients on this about, segmenting your client base, understanding where you invest more time with your clients, understanding where you put your clients into the cash cow category, and just keep it going for as long as you possibly can. So I think this is about being strategic with your clients, understanding where you can grow market share, having choice because you've got so much work on, but having close relationships. The market will change in 18 months, 2 years' time. It will change. So what we can't do today is damage the longer term effects and opportunities for the business. But this is the right time to get it straight and get it organized.
So what we're actually saying then is it's all about service and how we create service, and it's all about making the client, and more importantly, making the candidate feel that they are getting an experience that is worth paying for. And that's a bit, and I remember sort of, if we look at sort of expensive things, I remember taking my mum on her 80th birthday. We all took her out. We went to a Michelin star restaurant in the middle of the Yorkshire Dale somewhere, and they described it as hearty Yorkshire food that would fill Fred Truman. When the fish came out, I actually asked, I am assuming the fish is still alive and could probably feed another 15 people, because the piece of fish that we got was absolutely minute, with baby carrots, which they'd grown in their own garden, which were less than 2 centimeters long. And it was just there. And I'm 6'1", 6'2". I'm the smallest in my family. You should have seen the rest of the lads, look at this food and go, are you absolutely taking the mick? And the waitress' response was absolutely rude and very to the point. And we just got up and walked out and paid for what we paid for and walked out. But it's how they made us feel. Yet the following year, we took my mum again to a different restaurant, another Michelin star restaurant in Yorkshire, and you couldn't have been made to feel more welcome, and we were glad to pay the money. So I think it is all about how we make our feel, and how we overcome those fears is our improvement of service and understanding how our clients feel and understanding how our candidates feel about our service, and then engaging those services properly to make sure that we are always first thought for them, and then they always come to us for work, for our work and our capabilities. So the question is, if we were then, you talked there, Paul Jacobs, about you were working with a consultant this morning. If you were coaching a consultant about having these discussions with a client about increasing fees, where would you start?
So look, I think, as I was alluding to earlier, I think we've got to get our people into the right mindset now. And an important point here, and we all do this as consumers, we will all pay more money for a service, to Paul's point, that we consider to be better, superior to some other service. Every one of us does that. We buy designer labels at a more expensive rate, even if it's not necessarily the case that the product is superior. We like to purchase things that we believe have quality. This comes down, as you said, Howard, it's a deep question, because to get people to ask for more fees, higher fees than they've been paying in the past, or indeed that they're paying elsewhere, will come down to the client's perception of the quality of the service they're going to receive in return. And that comes down not only to the level or the quality of the service that they receive, but the quality of the candidates that they're going to interview or use. from a contractual temp point of view. So I think when you're talking about coaching our people, it's about really looking at what they're offering clients or candidates. How do they pitch the service? What kind of service are they focused upon providing? Because Paul's right, at the end of the day, if a client or a candidate, we're talking fees, so let's talk clients, if the client believes and actually witnesses that the level of the quality of service they receive from you is exactly the same as they get elsewhere, there is no discernible difference, why would they pay more? Well, maybe the only answer to that would be that you have the right candidates for them when they need them. So possibly that's an answer. But surely, if we are serious about really standing out from the crowd, it isn't just about providing the best candidates. It is absolutely about providing outstanding client service, world-class client service. So I think coaching consultants about having a discussion with clients about increasing fees really stems, I believe, from these people believing wholeheartedly that the service they provide to clients is superior in every sense to what that client will receive elsewhere. And that has to be tangible, not just mythical. It has to actually be something that's very evident in the processes and the manner in which we speak with clients, and the rate of meetings and conversations, the depth of the expertise we provide, and so forth. I think it's a deep question, but it's absolutely about making sure that we have people that really understand and provide service levels that are superior to anything they can get elsewhere.
So you probably know where I'm going to go with this, and Paul's just mentioned about something being tangible. So I'm going to go down the data route as the starting point. And I know Laura's on the call, and she knows from working with me in the past how much I look at data and use data in situations like this. So I think, for me, I think it's about understanding the cost of delivery and understanding how much time and effort you put into your clients. I think it's about looking at things like your fill rate by client. If you are working with a client and you fill in, 60–70% of all the jobs that are coming out without exclusivity, or even with exclusivity, then those are the clients that you want. So you may not want to pick the fights with those clients on the basis that, from a productivity perspective, it takes a lot less time and effort to get a return back from it. But within every business, there are clients in there where you might only be filling 15 or 20% of your roles. And that's where I think you've got to really start to look at the process and the time and effort that goes into it to make sure that you're profitable. I think on the data side, I'd be coaching people about making things, as Paul's just said, evidential. So using the data. We've mentioned about the 1 million vacancies that are currently in the UK. That's 1 million job posts that have been posted in the last 3 months. There's actually 1.5 million jobs in the UK. It's just that some of them are older than 3 months. So there's more jobs available now than ever before. The labour market has shrunk. It's shrunk by 500,000 according to Deloitte. So there's less people now in the labour market than ever before. Vacancies are at an all-time high. Candidate availability is at an all-time low. The amount of time and effort that we have to put into finding a placement has got longer and longer. It's my belief that if I sit down with a client and talk about how the cost of delivery has increased, because we have to spend so much time now talking to candidates, persuading them to leave, because this has been this fear of uncertainty throughout COVID, which has held people back from moving jobs. So the time that we spend on each vacancy has got longer and longer, and the amount of effort and time that we put into it has got harder and harder. I think that's an easy conversation to have with your client, providing you've got data to back it up and you're really clear on what you want on the outcome. And I'll just add one last point quickly, Howard. It's not all about the fees, by the way. Sometimes it's about reducing the rebates. If a client's coming to you on a Thursday and they want 10 new starters, you're in that, warehouse or contact center industry, and they want 10 starters for Monday, then I will be saying, I'll deliver it, but I can't give you any rebates on the basis that you're coming to me right at the last minute. So this is where we need to start pushing back a little bit in order to increase the profitability of what we do.
So I agree with all of that. And, I'm massively on the data front as well. And I think there's slightly more that we can do from that. What I've been saying to some of my clients is that, if you understand what your client's data looks like, and you understand the duration of the job, the number of CVs that you send across, etc. So it's not about price, it is about the actual work that you put in. If you then looked at your business and looked at the average and then looked at your best clients and knew your best clients, then what you'd be able to go to back to all clients and say, this is a client that we work with. We work on an exclusive exclusive basis, and this is what we deliver. Look at the difference in the data that they've got, the speed, etc., etc., etc. So it's all about that quality of service that you're giving, irrespective of the speed that you're giving back to them. So to me, it's about understanding all of that. The flip side of that is when we talk about compartmentalizing our client base, we need to compartmentalize our sale. And this is where we've got to get really sharp in what we're doing. There are certain clients that will be constantly a contingency client and will probably never pay more than the 15% that the average market is at the moment. There are certain clients, though, that we could get to exclusive, get to retained, and get to talent acquisition courses. But it means if we break our service down and then apply the right sale pitch to the client for the right service, then we can start to drive up our prices based on what the client actually wants. And with quantifiable evidence behind that, we can start to really drive into it. The world has now become a very data-driven marketplace. I think we were talking 6-9 months ago about data being the new liquid, the new gold, the new liquid oil, etc., etc. Well, every client is now talking about that. If you look at what they said about the Temp things, they want to make improved, they want to keep their fill rate the quickest, not the first past not the first past the post, but they need to make it quick. They want more due diligence, better decision making. They want more reports for more market information. So all the things that they're asking for, I know Simon Johnson joked a bit, was I out at a nightclub when I did the survey? No, these are what these guys are actually asking for. They're actually asking for this type of data. They're actually asking us to actually provide this type of things, but we are hell-bent on providing it for free, when really we should be thinking about, if I increase my fees, then these things start to come with those fees because I have more time to do the right things. And then actually the client understanding that contingency in a competitive nature is a poor recruitment process. And the more they understand that, the more they might pay more for that business. And that's what we've got to start to understand, those type of things.
Howard, can I just add a couple of quick points to this as well? Very importantly, when we speak to our consultants about increasing fees, it is absolutely critical that we make it clear to them that when they agree to low fees, they're also diminishing their personal earnings. We haven't said that, but we ought to, because it's not just about increasing our turnover, which we can do comfortably by increasing 1 or 2 percentage points, but it's also very much about the consultants themselves earning more money. And at a point when every one of our clients are looking for new consultants, desperately looking, and we're talking to people consistently, we ought to be able to bring them into an environment which gives them the best opportunity to be earning a great living. And if we can't be earning a great living in this market, when are we going to? So I think it's important that when we speak to and coach our consultants, we ought to be talking about the fact that when they agree to low fees, they're also giving away their income. So I definitely think that there's a strong point that has to be made here. We have to give them a motive. That's a big motive, I would have hoped.
So the next question then is the obvious question. And I think I've always said, being that one of these people that says, if I'm going to go to a client and ask a client for something, what I need to do is put my client, my shoes in, my feet in the client's shoes to see what they would think about that. So make sure that I'm covering all potential issues, etc. So why would a client agree to fee increases?
I think first and foremost for me, I think it depends on who the client is, Howard. If you're going to talk to, in most organizations, so I'm going to generalize a little bit here, but if your relationship is with a resource business partner, they probably haven't got the authority to actually change any fees. So you're probably going to get the answer of no. So this is about having the right relationships at the right time. I have a client who was dealing with a resource business partner, and this situation actually happened. And the agency owner then said, well, I can't work to that structure anymore, so I'm going to bow out the process gracefully. And then the CEO got involved and brought the agency back into the fold because of the value that the agency had back to that organization. And that happened literally about 10 days ago. So I think this is a really key point. I think if you're internal and you can't see the difference between agency A and agency B, then I wouldn't agree to it personally. So there's got to be something that differentiates you, or you've got to be really good in terms of the service that you've driven, your history, your past record. There's got to be something, Paul used this word tangible, there's got to be something tangible that the internal stakeholders in that client can grab hold of and say, that's why we're going to give these people a little bit more money. And just keep thinking about this data bit, because whoever you speak to at your client side is probably going to have to get it approved somehow. And again, just going back to the data, it's about making it less emotional and more factual.
So this really is something that is a bugbear of mine. Why would the client agree to a fee increase? So we have a tendency in our industry to be less than strict about fee agreements. In other words, we agree a fee with the client and there is no review date placed on when we're next going to have a conversation with them about the agreed fee. Or we agree a contingent fee and it isn't specifically stated when we agree that fee that fee is only for this role. It's specifically for this role. It doesn't mean that we've agreed to that fee on an ongoing basis. So for contingent recruitment, every time we agree a fee, there should be something in writing and on the CRM system that makes it abundantly clear internally and to the client that that fee was agreed for that specific vacancy only. That doesn't happen very often. Where we're tied into longer term agreements, where we're getting away from contingent recruitment, we're talking about contractual agreements, again, there need to be review dates in there. Now, I would frankly never agree to a fixed fee situation for more than maximum 12 months. Never. And that would be recorded. I would have meetings agreed with the client to go and talk about those fees. I might bring the fee down, by the way, I might add, if the actual volume of business was was beyond what I'd anticipated. I want to be balanced with my clients. But there are very few of these kind of disciplines going on in our industry. We agree a fee with a client, 15%, a vacancy comes up 3 months later, the consultant has a look online, oh, it was 15%, oh, it's 15%, Mr. Client. It's easy, isn't it? Because it's been agreed before, therefore it's an easy thing. And the client says, thank you. That shouldn't be going on. We should have very obvious records that dictate that that was agreed on that occasion. This time it's 15.5%. By the way, why do we always agree to rounded up percentages? Why don't we agree to 15.5, 16.3? Why are we always doing 15%, 16%? Come on, we can be smarter than that. But I think this comes down to something that I think is really important. Why would the client agree to a fee increase? Because they have to. Because we are compelling them to sit down and have a conversation about the fee. Whether that's increased or not, we're compelling them to have to talk to us about the fee. And we don't do that. These things are let slide for years and years and years. I started off by talking about terms of business never being reviewed, or very rarely being reviewed regularly, increasing our percentages. I come back to the point as consumers, when you sign up to Sky or you sign up to British Gas or whoever else you've signed up to, have a look at the small print, folks. It isn't forever that you've agreed to those fees. They will have review dates in there. You've signed up to a contractual period for sure. So why aren't we applying that to our own industry?
If I remember correctly then, Mr. Jacobs, of being an avid hater of Office Angels once a year. Why was we a hater of Office Angels once a year? Because you had in your contract that your temps would increase their rate by the rate of inflation every year. So although you're not increasing the actual fee, you're actually increasing the revenue that you're getting back by increasing the temps rate every year by the rate of inflation. We couldn't do that on recruit in CP because we were doing on contract, and therefore you were paying a limited company service. But why couldn't we? And it's those little things there, and you're right. And it's the same thing when the client comes for you one day and they're looking for a low-end operative, and it's 15%. The next day they're coming for a high-end salesperson, but we're still giving it at 15%. There's a completely different value. It's like, you want a pair of shoes to do the gardening in, you're going to spend, very little money on them. You want a pair of shoes to go out and you're going to spend more money on them. So we've got to start to think what we're actually supplying to our clients. So that comment there is absolutely right. But clients will only agree to a higher fee if they feel the value. And I will go back to that point all the time. If they feel the value, they'll agree to that higher fee. And that, again, is separating your sale out so they can understand what the differentiators are between the different types of recruitment you're going to provide to them, and therefore you would get a different price. But that should be in your contract of employment, contracts of in terms of business.
In our terms of business, we had, and it was on the back of the timesheets as well, we stated that annually, end of the year, that the fees would be adjusted, charges would be adjusted according to the average percentage increase recorded on the retail price index taken from the previous 12 months. Now, of course, we didn't always get that, but it allowed us to do that, to increase by 1 point, 2 points, something or another. Then the client would often push back, would have a conversation, and we would agree, we'd find a compromise. The compromise might be 1%, it might be 0.5%, but in virtually every case, we got an increase because we had a lever there that allowed us to do that. It was a contractual lever.
Just on that, I would add that when I outsourced the recruitment for BAE Systems to Alexander Mann, they did exactly the same thing. So there was a clause in their contract regarding RPI price increases. And when I renegotiated the contract with Carphone Dixon's a few years ago, I did exactly the same. It's an easier conversation to have with procurement people. It's one of the easy conversations to have with procurement people because it's standard procurement practice that you would build in inflation each year into a contract.
And that's a great point.
It's one of the few battles you'll win with procurement.
And it's a great point. And I think the point here, and let's be really clear, is that we're increasing our charges because our costs have gone up by the same percentage. Salaries have gone up. Often rent goes up, rates go up, utilities go up. I could go on a long list. So in order to keep our profit margin at the same level, you have to increase your fees. So it's commerce.
Exactly right. So I had one on the contract base, which is the same on the temp basis. The higher the temp was paid, the more the percentage actually fee went up, because obviously we were discount factoring, etc. So therefore, the more the interest went up. So we increased our fees, and we had a stepped approach to that with our clients, so our client understood what was actually going on and where that was. So the question then, from a technical point of view, is what's more important? And we have this question quite an awful lot with clients. What's more important, the pound value of the deal or the percentage margin? So I'll give you a choice. You're going to earn £500 a week margin on 10%, or you're going to earn £250 a week on 20%. What's the most important?
Oh, maths lesson now. Go on, Paul, you go first.
Oh, thank you. That well swerved. So I think for me, and Simon's just commented, I'm going to disagree. I think it's percentage all day long. And don't get me wrong, the pound is important. This is one of those that is probably an and, not an or. So of course you're looking at the pound.
Simon,
for me, gives you an indication of your profitability, how much money you're making out of that. If we've talked about day rates and hourly rates, just to add, for me, every time your contract is renewed, or a contractor or temp's extended, that's a really great point to start looking at your pay rate. And I was with an agency down in London last week. They've got people that have been in there a couple of years in their various clients, and they still haven't, over that 2-year period, re-looked at the the day rates that some of the contractors are on. And so in the professional space, it's an easy way to realign and make a bit more money. So the percentage for me has always been one of the key business metrics that I've always looked at to make sure it's staying consistent or going up. I get you might get, somebody on £1,500 a day, you might only make 3%, and therefore the pounds that you're making is quite a lot. But it shows consistently how you're pricing your business. And if you understand your cost of sale, it's a good enabler and tool to make sure that you're still making the same amount of profit.
So I'm frightened of Simon here because I'm going to have to say I agree with Paul here. I think it's percentage. Sorry, Simon. Yeah, I'm going to get some nasty comment in a minute. I think it is percentage, and I think it's an easier thing to sell in as well because you're talking a 1 or 2% increase as opposed to pounds, which is a harder thing emotively to be able to convey. It's probably not. Listen, it's a nice thing that we're debating whether it's percentage or pounds. At least we're talking here about increasing. So whatever your choice, whether it's percentage or pounds, at least your mindset is in that space because we have to look at our fee levels. We have to consider those increases. As I've already said, just from a very basic level, we are increasing our costs considerably in our industry. We have to. We're all desperately trying to find more people.
So to move quickly on, because we've got questions on, so I'm just going to very quickly upset Simon even further, because if a person came in to value your business, they will look at the percentage overall fee and margin that you make. If you're making 10 pence in the pound, they're not going to see your business as a really strong business. If you're making 20 pence in the pound, they'll see it as a stronger business. However, Simon Johnson is a one-man business, and therefore it's all about him. But if you want to grow and scale, Simon, that's what you're going to do. If you want to have a common argument, I know you're in Birmingham. We're in Birmingham on the 7th of October at the Expo. So come and have a chat, like we did last time at the Expo. Second last question then, objection handling. We know we're going to get objections from the clients when we come up with this. How would you deal with the objections? Quickly, nice and punchy.
Do you want to kick it off, Paul?
Yeah, can do. So for me, I'm just going to repeat what I said at the start, which is you've got to be prepared to walk away. So if you're not prepared to walk away and you haven't got other business to choose from, then don't enter in that situation. And if you do get to a point where you have to walk away, just make sure you do it really gracefully, it goes without saying, and make sure you keep the door open. The ideal scenario in that case is that the client comes back to you at some point in time because they realize that you added an awful lot more value than any other supplier. If they don't come back to you, then they've answered the question for you in terms of value. But you've got to be prepared to walk away. In any negotiation, you have to have that position.
Yeah, Paul's right, absolutely right. But look, I think nobody wants to walk away. I mean, clearly Paul's right. I mean, there comes a point where you have to have a walk away position for certain. If we come back to coaching consultants, which is ultimately what I think we're talking about when we're talking about dealing with client objections, it's about making sure our people are well trained, that they know how to deal with the objections, what's likely to come in their direction, and they have a well-rehearsed method of dealing with them. I'd like to think that the conversation is a calm one. It's not emotional, and that we're giving our clients very sound reasons why we have to increase the charges, not because we fancy increasing them. We have to give them good reason as to why we're having to do that in order to justify the increases. And that comes down to the service levels, but it also comes down to explaining in great detail what kind of market we're in and the difficulty in finding good quality candidates and the cost of doing that. And I think that if we can put those, if we can frame the rhetoric in a positive way, that the outcome for the client means that we will improve or at least maintain the quality of our service and be able to find them the right candidates because we are able to do that based upon the fees we're receiving, then I think you've got a really good chance of increasing the fees. But if it's simply a very bland, we're increasing the fees with very little substance behind it, of course they're going to push back.
I think I agree. It's about planning. Put yourself in your client's shoes. How would you object to it? And have the plan ready for them for when they do object. But it's also having all the data and have everything behind you to make sure that whatever they come back with, you have an answer. But what Paul Sharp's saying is one thing that I am a huge advocate of: have a walk away point and walk away. And that leaves the last question was, we know we don't, if you don't ask, you don't get. But what happens if the client does say no? And just walking away is the answer, but how do we walk away?
I think that we're using the wrong comment, walking away. I think it's the wrong thing to say. No disrespect, Paul. I know what Paul means, but it's not walking away. What you're doing is you're giving a bit of distance. If it was me, I would be then going back to the client within days to find out whether they're able to find people through their usual methods. You know, every single person listening right now will give examples of clients who've said they won't pay the fees and within a week have said, okay, we will, because they can't find people elsewhere. So I think you're giving them a bit of distance, but you're going back regularly to establish whether they're having any success through their current methods. And in a lot of cases, they won't be having success and they will come back to you and pay your fees. So I don't like the phrase walking away. I never want to use that expression. I think we keep contact with people. We utterly professional always, and we give them, as Paul said, be gracious and give them the opportunity to come back. You don't want to make people feel bullied or humiliated. Always professional, and very often they do come back, because if they can't get what they want elsewhere, they'll have to come back.
Sharpie?
I've nothing to add to that. I think that is absolute spot on.
So I think what we're saying is that if we have the right data, the right mindset, we use fear as a driver to move forward, then approaching clients and talking to clients about increasing their fees in various different methods rather than just in simplistic asking for more money, actually going in with a genuine reason why and giving them different things of what will happen, then we should be able to start to negotiate with some of our clients and then start to increase our fee level. And I think what was said earlier on about, I think Annette started the conversation about recruiters standing together and not, dropping our fees, is the first thing that we all should start to think about. And Annette's right, we shouldn't be creating a cartel, but we should be creating a cartel and stop dropping our pants, because that's not doing anybody any favors. So ladies and gents, thanks very much for your time. It's been much appreciated. Next week, we're going to talk about technology and how technology can help you increase your market share, increase or reduce the speed to recruit for your clients, and give you an opportunity to increase your fees yet again. So ladies and gents, once again, thanks so much for your time. It's been much appreciated. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Paul and Paul, thank you much for your input.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
See you all next week.
See you soon.